So then, after an absolutely amazing 2 weeks in India, not with its challenges of course, I'm back home in the UK now, back in the cold, hence the scarf and the hat. But what I wanted to do was really do a debrief video after India. I really hope you've enjoyed the series, but I think it's important to do a debrief video because you may remember that Bald and Bankrupt said that he visited India so you don't have to. And what I want to do is talk about whether or not I think he's right. He mentioned that India was one of the most frustrating countries in the world to travel through, and I certainly see some of that point. But is he really right in saying that India is not a place for other people to travel? Let's find out. So I hope you've enjoyed the India series, but you will remember, if you've watched the series through, that I started off in Delhi, and not 15 minutes having got off my plane had I run into my first problem. So I had a hotel booked which was meant to be right on the airport. It was a 4-star, it had great Google reviews, great TripAdvisor reviews, great Booking.com reviews, but when the driver picked me up and took me there, it wasn't where it was meant to be. It wasn't a nice hotel. It certainly wasn't 4-star, and actually the name of the hotel was completely different. So not 15 minutes had I got off the plane, I was already swindled for the first time. So that was a really disappointing start to my trip in India. However, I managed to speak to my driver and say, look, let's just take me to the nearest hotel chain. I went to a Holiday Inn, and that's where the first of these videos began. So that wasn't a great start to the trip, but things could have been a lot worse. I could have been stuck without a hotel at all, and these things happen. Look, I'm not going to have any hard feelings, but it was a disappointing way to start my trip in India. You'll then remember that I started my journey through India by going from Delhi to Agra, from the Hazrat Nizamuddin station, getting the train, the Vande Bharat Express, all the way to Agra. And I have to say, I was very, very pleasantly surprised by the quality of the train, the efficiency at the stations, and how nice the journey was all the way to Agra. So a huge thumbs up to India for that. And I have to say, in terms of it being a frustrating place to travel, I didn't experience that. I booked the ticket nice and easily before I left with a company called 12 Go, and then when I got to the station, it was very clear which platform was mine, which train was mine, and then when I got onto the platform, people were super friendly and helpful. So that was great. That was a wonderful experience getting from Delhi to Agra. Really, really simple, a direct train. I think it took about an hour and a half or a couple of hours, but it was in an air-conditioned car. The train was relatively new. Brilliant. Really enjoyed that. Definitely recommend taking the Vande Bharat Express from Delhi to Agra. Then once in Agra, I got a tuk-tuk journey across to my hotel, which was called the Taj Vista Hotel. Again, massively recommend that hotel. Fortunately, I didn't have the same problem that I did when I went to Delhi, in that the hotel wasn't real. It was real, and it was fantastic. So I would recommend staying there. And I can confirm, as you may have seen in the video, that if you do go on the roof, you do get a vista of the Taj Mahal. You get to see it from the neck up. So again, really nice hotel, well located, in a relatively quiet side street. But I think what is quiet in India everywhere is quite bustling and chaotic. So I wouldn't necessarily say it was completely silent, but the hotel itself was fantastic, really good value for money. And again, I have to say, the people that I met there were fantastic, really kind, really welcoming, extremely hospitable. So a huge thumbs up for the Taj Vista Hotel. Now, obviously, anybody visiting Agra will want to visit the Taj Mahal. Of course they will. I mean, this is the big reason that most people go to Agra, as well as the fort, but principally for the Taj Mahal, obviously one of the 7 wonders of the world. Now, I, unfortunately, as you will have noticed if you saw the videos, couldn't get in. I mean, first of all, I'd booked on a Friday when it was closed, but my guide said, actually, what we could do is we could go around the back of the Taj Mahal, and you can go to a place called Mehtab Gardens, and you'll still get a really good view. So I was cool with that. So we tried it, but unfortunately, the camera that I use has an external battery pack, which also couples as a tripod, and the rules around tripods are strictly enforced over at the Taj Mahal. For me, as a tourist, was it frustrating? Sure it was. I really wanted to come to the Taj Mahal. I've travelled 5,000 miles principally to see it. However, I wasn't allowed in. So yes, it was frustrating. But do I think that that's their problem? Not at all. It's my problem as a tourist for having a tripod and having to adhere to the rules of the site itself. So I have absolutely no problem at all with the rules being enforced. Fortunately, what I was able to do is take off this battery pack and tripod, and then I was able to visit the next day. So I hope you've been able to check out my video of the Taj Mahal. And if you are planning to go to Agra, just bear in mind that you are not allowed to take tripods, microphone equipments, etc. A small camera is okay, a small video camera is okay, but no tripods and external microphone equipment. It is a historical site and it is a mausoleum. So of course they don't want people with tripods trying to take professional photos, getting in the way of other viewers, microphones, etc., causing noise and chaos at a site where essentially we're meant to be respecting those that are buried there. So that are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts even on the entry to the Taj Mahal. Massively recommend doing it. Get yourself a guide because they'll walk you through. They'll also find the best photograph spots, and they'll also make sure that you get through the crowds without having any trouble at all. So get yourself a guide, go and enjoy it, but just remember you can't take a tripod, you can't take microphone equipment, but you can enjoy it, so go ahead and do it. So I only spent 2 days in Agra, 2 full days and 3 nights, 2 full days, yeah, in Agra. So not an awful lot of time at all. So unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to go to the Agra fort because it was also closed on one of the days that I was there. But that's not a problem at all. If I ever go back to India, I'll probably pop back and see it again. But I think I was so lucky to see the Taj Mahal in the sunshine. I think I couldn't have picked a better time. My guide even said there was like a 2-hour window in the day. In the morning it's foggy, in the evening it's foggy, but during those 2 hours that I'd fortunately booked my ticket, I really landed on my feet and got to see it at its best. So that was fantastic. But then you remember that from Agra I went to Jaipur. And again, I used the Indian Rail network because it was the quickest and most efficient way to get from Agra to Jaipur. However, what I had managed to do, though, again using 12Go, is accidentally book myself into 3rd class. And you'll remember that I was on a shelf on the train, which was going to be a 3-hour journey to Jaipur. Now, that 3-hour journey turned into a 5.5-hour journey. I'm not sure why, but a large part of that journey was spent on that shelf, effectively in the bed. That was quite claustrophobic because the roof was quite close. I couldn't sit up straight. The carriage was absolutely packed, and therefore it was hot, it was sweaty. There was lots of noise from other family members who were in there and all that sort of good stuff. But it was a great experience. Now that I've done it and I can look back, I look on it really fondly. So again, I have no reason to say that travelling through India was frustrating. Apart from the journey being 2 hours more than it should have been, you know, it was perfectly fine. I was comfortable, I was warm, mostly comfortable, I was warm, and, you know, there was toilets, etc., so it was perfectly acceptable. So again, if you are going to travel and do part of the Golden Triangle and do like I did, go from Agra to Jaipur, I do recommend getting the train. It's super simple, really cost effective, and if you bring a few supplies with you, some crisps, some sandwiches or whatever, and maybe a bottle of water or two, you're going to be just fine. But just bear in mind, like me, maybe don't book the 3rd class ticket unless you want that experience of sitting on a shelf. So then, once in Jaipur, I had one of the lesser positive experiences as soon as I got off the train in Jaipur. It is chaotic there. There are 1,000,001 people wanting you to take a tuk-tuk ride with them, of course, but I managed to book an Uber tuk-tuk. Again, just worth mentioning actually that you can book tuk-tuks and even motorcycles, but I wouldn't recommend that. You can buy tuk-tuks or rent tuk-tuks using the Uber app, and someone will come and pick you up in a tuk-tuk, and it is so cost effective. I think a 25-minute journey for me from Jaipur train station to my hotel cost me about £1, £1 British, 100 rupees, something like that. So really recommend it. However, I did find my tuk-tuk driver to be quite rude and wouldn't take no for an answer. And what do I mean by that? Well, I had already booked all of my tours and trips for my time in Jaipur before I got there. It's something I always do. I make sure I've booked my itinerary and everything's sorted. He, however, wanted me to cancel everything that I'd done and go with him. And he said that I'll have a terrible time with the people that I booked with, and that he was the right person to go for a trip with. Now, this was for the first couple of minutes of the journey. I said, no, thank you. I'm absolutely fine. I've got everything booked and I'm going to be great. For the next 25 minutes, he got increasingly more rude, increasingly more aggressive, and eventually when I got to my hotel, didn't even drop me off outside it, dropped me off down the road and just said, you know, get on your way, like that. So I did give him a poor review on Uber, because that's just unacceptable. I totally understand that people need to make money, particularly in places like India, where tourists are going to be visiting and they are a good way to earn some income. However, wherever you go in the world, the basic things to understand and expect are respect and kindness, and he didn't do either of those things, unfortunately. So it led me to have the impression that only these sorts of people would be nice to you if you were going to buy something. Now, fortunately, later in my trip in India, I met lots of wonderful people, and so I wasn't left with that impression when I left. However, from a frustrating point of view, not only getting sold to by everybody at Jaipur station, but then also having that negative tuk-tuk ride with the driver, those two things did come across as frustrating. And so that is something that I would say to look out for if you are going to be traveling through India. Just be aware that these people are going to be selling to you quite hard, and in some instances, if you say no, unfortunately they may not take no for an answer, and it might get a bit rude. So that was my thought of the tuk-tuk ride to the hotel. But that aside, then I got to my hotel in Jaipur, which I'd booked again before I travelled, and it was called the Hotel Bissau Palace. And what a place. This is one of the highlights of my trip to India. And yes, one of the highlights of my trip to India was a hotel. But if you go back and watch the video, you'll see exactly why. Now, it is a family-owned hotel, and the family are part of the royal family and have forts based in Bissau, over in Rajasthan. And they are one of the most welcoming and wonderful families and people that I've met anywhere on my travels across the world. They say when you come to the hotel, which is a beautiful boutique palace of a hotel, which was actually a palatial residence, that they want you to feel like you're part of the family, not that you're visiting a hotel. And I cannot tell you how much it really did feel like that. I was welcomed as soon as I got there by family members. I met the king. I spent an evening with the whole of the family, and I'm still in touch with them now. They're really, really kind and lovely, wonderful people. So what I would say for the Hotel Bissau Palace in Jaipur, it is a 10 out of 10 experience. Not just because of the beautiful hotel, the comfortable room, the great food, but because of the welcoming hospitality that you get from the family. So all of that frustration that I experienced with the tuk-tuk driver a couple of hours before dissipated when I met this family and spent some time there. So if you're visiting Jaipur, don't book one of the big chain hotels, you know, the Radissons and this kind of thing, because all you're going to get is effectively a bland hotel experience that you would get anywhere else in the world. Book the Hotel Bissau Palace. It is a beautiful boutique hotel with tons and tons of history and a wonderful welcoming family as well. Well, then came the 8-hour tuk-tuk ride around the city, and much to the previous tuk-tuk driver's disappointment, Rashid, my new tuk-tuk driver, was an absolute legend. We had a fantastic day. Jaipur itself is a UNESCO heritage site. So many sights to see, and has a wonderful pink city. And obviously, if you've watched the two-part videos on Jaipur, so there's 2 videos, go back and watch those if you've not seen them yet. But I saw pretty much everything there was to see in Jaipur. The highlights for me that really stood out, apart from Rashid, who was such a wonderful tuk-tuk driver, so knowledgeable, knew lots about the history of the city, was a real proud Jaipur resident. The highlights for me were the Wind Palace, so Taj Mahal, both on the inside but also the outside from the road. I mean, that building from an architecture perspective is just unique. I've never seen anything like it anywhere in the world. That was absolutely, truly spectacular. Another thing that I really loved whilst I was there was the mausoleum area where different kings and maharajas from yesteryear have been buried, and the architecture again of those mausoleums was just beautiful and remarkable. So another highly recommended spot to go to. Something else that I really enjoyed whilst I was there was Pana Mina Kakund, which is the symmetrical steps and I suppose you'd call it like a sink well, where people can go and in history and times gone by, they would have gone there to get drinking water for their animals, and also to wash clothes. But another absolutely spectacular place. And then I suppose another place I would recommend going and visiting in Jaipur is the city palace itself. So the city palace, whilst it was a lot more expensive than the rest of the tourist sites that I saw across India, even the Taj Mahal, it is spectacular. It is beautiful, really lovely manicured grounds. They've got textile museums, art museums, armory stores, lots to see and lots to soak up. But also it is a way of getting away from the madness of the city. Annexed to the city palace is a place called Jantar Mantar, which is an observatory dating back hundreds of years, where enormous elaborate sundials and measurement tools were built to mark the declination of the sun, so you could work out the time to precisely within 2 seconds, but also the location of stars and other celestial bodies around the universe. I found that to be absolutely fascinating and spectacular, and again, I must have been lucky, because the day that I went out on this 8-hour tuk-tuk drive was the day when it was beautiful sunshine. So Jaipur for me was a massive thumbs up. And apart from that tuk-tuk driver at the start, which I'm going to forget now, Jaipur is an absolute gem of a city. If you plan to go to India and you plan to do the Golden Triangle, or even just travel around the Rajasthan area, you have to go to Jaipur, because it is absolutely spectacular. Now, I'll end this little section here on Jaipur by saying that I was recommended to go to Jodhpur as well by the family that owned the Hotel Bissau Palace, and where Jaipur has the pink city, Jodhpur has a blue city. But unfortunately on this particular trip I didn't make it, so perhaps sometime in the future I'll go back and visit there. But after Jaipur, I visited Udaipur. So after 3 days in Jaipur, I took a flight with Indigo Airlines from Jaipur International Airport to Udaipur, and it was fantastic. I mean, the flight itself was really turbulent and bumpy, but that's just because of weather. But again, when Bald and Bankrupt says traveling through India is super frustrating, I didn't find that. You know, now I've done tuk-tuks, I've done trains, I'm on planes, I've done taxi rides, and there are small parts and pockets of frustration in India, but I certainly wouldn't go as far as to say that I visited India so you don't have to. So I got a plane from Jaipur even to Udaipur, about an hour's flight, and once I got there, people couldn't have been more helpful to help me get a cab, and I got a taxi from the airport, which is actually quite a long way outside of the city, right away down into the middle of the city, where there are the lakes and rivers and waterways that make Udaipur so famous and beautiful. That took about half an hour, and I stayed at a place called the Madri Haveli Retreat, which was a beautiful hotel. If you've watched the videos on Udaipur, I think there are 2 different videos. Check out the bit where I show you around the hotel. It really reminds me of a Moroccan riad, a hotel with a large atrium. But that was a great hotel, really comfortable, very nice. But what were my thoughts on Udaipur? Well, the first thing that I noticed, sadly, and it is a big issue across the whole of India, was the pollution. The pollution in Udaipur was particularly bad. My hotel was down one of these snaggly little side streets, and it was just unbelievably polluted there. So much so that when I got to my hotel room and I ran a finger across the surface, there was black on my finger from pollution that had actually settled in my room. So that wasn't great. But Udaipur itself is utterly beautiful. It's almost like an Indian Venice. So if you've ever been to Venice, which is of course in Italy and absolutely spectacular, you know, a city on the river, Udaipur isn't an awful lot different. Different architecture, different part of the world, different sights, sounds and smells, but actually essentially it is a city on the water. I cannot recommend visiting Udaipur enough. Again, I don't know why, the gods must have been shining down on me, but I managed to go on the Lake Pachola and visit the city palace when it was absolutely beautiful sunshine with blue skies, and that makes for just an even better experience. So having spent a couple of days in Udaipur exploring everywhere there, I can't recommend it highly enough. Of course, it's part of the wider Golden Triangle, so the Golden Triangle would come down from Jaipur and Agra, of course, but you know, Udaipur is only another hour or so from Jaipur, so I do recommend going there. I also went for some lunch when I had a bit of a Delhi belly stomach at a place called La Marina, which again I highly recommend. So if you're in the area and you're looking for somewhere good to eat with a nice view, definitely recommend going there. But did I find anybody to be annoying, frustrating or rude? Not at all. The owner of the hotel couldn't be more accommodating, and everybody that I came into contact with whilst I was in Udaipur was absolutely lovely. And even though I was actually the only British guy on the boat, everybody else on the boat was super friendly as well. So there you go. So that was the idea of Udaipur even. I'll get it right at some point, but I can't recommend it highly enough. If you've got some time and you are visiting that part of India, do go and visit. Udaipur is a gem. Now then, to finish off this review of India, of course, towards the back end of my trip, I got Delhi belly. And actually, now that I've been back in the UK for a couple of days, I'm absolutely fine again. But it does seem to be a rites of passage for travellers that go to India to get a bit of an upset stomach. And a bit of an upset stomach is maybe an underestimation. I was so ill. I'd not been that ill for years and years and years. And I'd done my best throughout those 2 weeks to only eat food that had been cooked really well, and not to come into contact with contaminated water, contaminated meats, vegetables, etc. And the ways that you can do that is just be really careful when you're out and about. Don't eat street food, don't drink the tap water, don't drink ice, don't eat salads, don't eat stuff that you've not seen how it's been prepared, and also don't eat things that have not been cooked, that have had the chance to have the bacteria killed. So I'd followed all of that, but unfortunately on my last couple of days in Udaipur, or was it, yeah, Udaipur, I was really unwell. So that did take a bit of a shine off my experience, unfortunately. And it also meant that when I travelled back to Delhi, again, I flew from Udaipur to Delhi. It was about an hour and a half's journey with Indigo Airlines. Again, beautiful airline to fly with, no problems whatsoever. It did mean that I had to rest up ahead of the long flight back to the UK. So I didn't get to experience Delhi, which is a real shame. I really wanted to go into Old Delhi and see what it was like. I'd heard so many good things, and I really wanted to visit the Red Fort and other sites that there are to see there. But I did manage to get a taxi to and from the airport into central Delhi, so I saw a little bit of it. But what I did see, the good things are that Delhi is vibrant. It is full of culture. There are street barbers cutting people's hair by the sides of the road. There are wonderful buildings and monuments. There's tons of history. But the negative is that it is super duper polluted. It is super duper busy as well. I mean, some of the traffic that we saw, I was stuck in a traffic jam at some points, not moving for over 15 minutes whilst the police tried their very best to work out the traffic. So I think Delhi is one of those places where you've got to go in with your eyes open. You need to know that the traffic is bad, and if it is going to be a problem for you that there's the traffic, use the tube, the metro, which does run throughout the city. I didn't use the metro unfortunately on this trip because I was unwell, but next time if I do visit Delhi I will do that. But what were my thoughts of Delhi in the time that I was there? Well, I stayed at this place called the newly built Gold the Royal, which was very nice, very brand new hotel, super cheap, good food, very comfortable room. And I stayed in the room for 2 days, basically being sick. And then I moved to a hotel in a place called Aero City, which is by the airport. I went to, I think it was called the Prime Plaza Hotel by the airport there. So I'd recommend that hotel. It was perfectly fine. They checked me in early, which they didn't have to do. And then I was ready for my flight, which I had to get up for at 2 o'clock in the morning. So then the flight home and getting to Delhi airport, really easy, about 5 minutes from the Aero City area. So if you are getting a flight at an ungodly hour in the morning, I do recommend paying that little bit extra to stay at the Aero City, because it means that you don't have to get out of bed quite as early to travel across Delhi to the airport. And the airport itself was pretty organised. It was pretty busy at 3 o'clock in the morning. I imagine it will be busy all hours because the flights seem to run 24/7 there. But the airport was pretty busy. The one slight complaint that I have about the airport is they don't take digital boarding passes. So when you check in online for your flight, which I had done, and I only take hand luggage, I'd hoped to go straight through security and just chill out before the flight. No luck. I was sent back from security to go and queue up in a huge queue to get a boarding pass when I didn't have any bags to check in. So I had to get a paper boarding pass. So that's my only complaint of that experience. But there may be security considerations and reasons for them doing that, so I won't come down too hard on them. So then, what are my final conclusions of India? Well, it's more good than bad. That's for sure. The bad stuff, let's start with that. The pollution, 100%. The hawkers, people trying to sell to you, are an issue. If the pollution can be brought under control, and therefore some of the traffic brought under control, it will not only make the lives of tourists better, but more importantly, the lives of Indian people better. I can't imagine what it's like for young Indian people growing up today in India with that level of pollution. It must be so detrimental to your health. So that is a huge issue that I think India need to tackle, and tackle quickly. Traffic, therefore, of course, would be something that also gets addressed as part of that. But I think the infrastructure of India is coming up for sure. Good train networks, good road networks, although they're jam-packed, and everything seemed to run relatively smoothly. So from that point of view, I don't find India that frustrating to travel through, purely from a travel infrastructure perspective. What I did find frustrating is that people will sell to you, they'll follow you around, and at times can be quite intimidating. So there were a couple of occasions where people would follow me. I think I've captured it on video, even when I'm doing videos, and just stand in the background, and that's not a very nice feeling, particularly when you've got to keep an eye out for pickpockets. Now, I definitely didn't experience anybody doing any pickpocketing at all. That's not to say it wouldn't happen, but I don't like the idea of being followed, particularly when you say no to people. I don't want to buy something from you or go in your tuk-tuk or whatever it is. They continue to follow and harass you. That can't continue. That isn't okay. So that's another thing that needs to be stopped. I think no needs to be respected as an answer in India. And you know, no hard feelings whatsoever, because 99% of the people that I met were absolutely lovely and wonderful, as you'll have seen in the videos. But there are that 1% which unfortunately bring it down a little bit. In terms of history, culture, sights, sounds, flavours, all of that kind of thing, India is an assault on the senses. It's one of the most fascinating places that I've ever been. It's one of the most remarkable places from a history and culture perspective. And the food, I mean, before I went to India, I was a huge Indian food fan, but the food is absolutely delicious. Just exercise the caution that I've mentioned previously. Try not to eat anything that you haven't seen cooked and prepared particularly well. Avoid ice, avoid salad, avoid street food, and you should be absolutely fine. So from that point of view, overall, do I recommend India? And do I agree with Bald and Bankrupt saying he visited India so you don't have to? In a word, no, I don't agree with him. Sure, there are things that India can do better, but there are things that every country, including the United Kingdom, can do better, not just for guests, but for its own residents. Am I going to hold that against India? Of course not. So would I recommend visiting India? Absolutely. Go in with your eyes open, your ears open, your nose open, and all of your senses open, because it is an assault on the senses. It's a wonderful experience with beautiful people, amazing history and culture, and it's not that far on a plane if you're coming from the UK. Those are my thoughts on India. Let me know your thoughts below. And as a final thought, I want to visit India again in the future. Where do you think I should go in the country next? Thanks for watching. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care.